OCO, beautiful people. In today's educational history lesson, I'll be displaying on the screen just how much of a comedian Tony Fauci really is, and why it is important to pay close attention to every detail concerning the statements he has made currently and in the past, in front of the likes of Congress, the media, and of course the public. To watch all of my exclusive content not featured here on my channel, log on to my website at imjustheretomakeyoutthink.com/films. Now, obviously, I'm not a doctor here, so I am not about to state any medical advice or medical information throughout any parts of this video. I am also not attempting to influence or persuade a person's decision-making when it comes to their own personal health, or even their own personal beliefs for that matter. This video's purpose is to strictly serve as a parody journalistic means of critiquing Tony Fauci and many of his statements made in his raspy Brooklyn, New York, Italian mafia style accent that I find to be absolutely hilarious.
I'd say even if you live alone, I would wear a mask in the house, especially in the shower, because frankly, droplets can make the way through the drain and come up through somebody else's toilet, infecting them through the anus. Ballpark, in 2 to 5 to 20 years, we can start thinking about considering the idea of pondering, the thought of conceptualizing the possibility of maybe, perhaps, reopening, but probably not. I would avoid having any fun whatsoever in the near to far future.
And don't you worry your pretty little head, YouTube execs. I'll be sure to play clips from those approved sources that you claim are the only ones trustworthy during these horrific times of politicalized, whatever. Anyway, let's begin with Tony's hilarious ways of assuming things, meaning that he's not quite sure about particular things, but he'll try to give his best predictions or educated guesses otherwise when confronted with direct questions from the media about trusting his take on the very science that he trusts, or rather believes in.
But I believe, so we're projecting, we originally thought it likely is going to be less, I would imagine, projecting that in the next couple of weeks. But I don't see this disappearing. I'm not certain, but I think we may not eradicate it. That we very well might see it might actually get worse. There's no guarantee it'll happen. These are pure estimates. So I made a calculation, so I would imagine, but I think we all have to be honest and humble. Nobody really knows for sure, but I think is a reasonable estimate. And in fact, most of my epidemiology colleagues agree with me.
Yeah, of course, nothing is exact.
The bottom line is it's a guesstimate. I gave a range. Probably end of March, beginning of April. It's probably going to take several months. I think that's going to probably be by the middle to the end of the summer, so that I hope, right.
Okay.
Well, it's here, no doubt. I mean, we predicted it would be.
I would imagine possibly, I have confidence that if they feel, then I think it's likely, as I would imagine it. Well, I don't want to be predicting how high it can go. I could only say what we do know.
Now, with all of this predicting the future going on, you would think that Tony is some sort of anointed prophet sent directly from God, or maybe a genie out of a bottle, granting 3 wishes to those who released him from captivity, whoever that may be. Or maybe you believe that the title of director of the NIAID is his excuse to be considered a scientist somehow. But no, in reality, he's just a glorified supervisor with 30 plus years of experience in a medical managerial role, acting as a scientist, while his undisclosed minions are in a lab doing maybe what scientists would normally do, given the fact that we do not see them at all, consistently on television giving advice and guesses to the public, the media, and the government. But he is.
Right now, one of the major levels of activity and things that we're doing is to develop vaccines and drugs for treatment of. So I'm very much responsible for providing leadership in that direction with my staff, which is a very qualified staff of scientists and administrators. So we do that usually from around 7 o'clock in the morning until around midday. I have a laboratory that I run. I'm also a scientist, so I meet with my own lab people during that time. And then virtually every day, for one reason or other, we go down to the White House, interact with the White House Task Force, meet with the Vice President, occasionally meet with the President, and try and set some of the guidelines for reopening, the guidelines for addressing the bursts of infection that we're now seeing. Then when I get home in the evening, this is the one that really is the clincher, is you usually have about 1,000 emails you got to look at. So you do that until the wee hours of the morning, go to bed, get up, 5 o'clock, 5:30, and start all over again.
Now, I'm sure many of you do recall the time where, again, Tony was predicting the future back in 2017, warning us all about the possibility of something on the horizon. And his timing couldn't have been more perfect. And we all know that humans are not perfect, even though we strive to be. But again, in reality, perfection is flawlessness, which is something that every human doesn't carry as a normalized trait in a general sense. Just ask Brandon when he gave his misspoken claim on October 24th, 2020.
Secondly, we're in a situation where we have put together, and you guys did it for our the President Obama's administration before this. We have put together, I think, the most extensive and inclusive voter fraud organization in the history of American politics.
So, yeah, nobody's perfect. But Tony managed to perform his best stand-up comedy act in front of the nation, giving his flawless prediction of what lies ahead for American citizens.
I would bring that perspective to the topic today, is the issue of preparedness. And if there's one message that I want to leave with you today based on my experience, and you'll see that in a moment, is that there is no question that there will be a challenge, the coming administration, in the arena of infectious diseases, both chronic infectious diseases in the sense of already ongoing disease, and we have certainly a large burden of that, but also there will be a surprise outbreak. And I hope by the end of my relatively short presentation, you will understand why history, the history of the last 32 years that I've been the director of NIAID, will tell the next administration that there's no doubt in anyone's mind that they will be faced with the challenges that their predecessors were faced with.
Yeah, I get it. It's all based on science and the history of history repeating itself. Yeah, well, karma has a comedic way of presenting itself also, but I'll get into that later, because I want to point out another time that you may be vaguely familiar with when Tony puts on his best comedic act and does this exact same thing, but in 2009, which is now 13 years ago.
You know, as a public health person, I would think...
Wait, hold up. I want to point out that he didn't claim to be a scientist at this time, but he's still performing the same comedic, hilarious act in front of the U.S. Senate.
As a public health person, I would think that the goal that I would see to really stabilize the system and therefore make it less of a crisis issue when you get to have a flu, which we know will again occur as was predicted, even though they're rare events, they do occur, is to get as many people vaccinated as possible. And what we foresee in the future is that influenza will be something that is essentially a routine vaccine for everyone. And if we then transition that into the universal vaccine, then you may only have to do that every couple of years and get people protected not only from seasonal flu, but from pandemic flu. In my mind, that's the end game. And that's good for the companies, too, because they're going to know and predict that every year, the vast majority of the American population is going to get vaccinated, not having to guess, will they or will they not this year or next year.
I'm just here to make you think.